rise. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, let the minutes show that all members are present. There are no citizen comments tonight. We have no citizen comments for the safe return of in-person learning plan. School board member reports. We'll start with Chad.
I attended the graduation, and which was great, by the way. She's not here. That's it for me.
All right, thank you. Deb?
All I had was agenda planning and then the graduation.
Eric?
Graduation.
All right, I was also at graduation. I attended an end of year staff party with the primary school people and agenda planning. Sue?
I did a couple of staff picnics, a seed general meeting. I didn't even forward the things that with the legislature in flux, not much really there. I did also attend a Zoom on the end of the year recognition for retirees and graduation, and we just had a policy meeting.
All right, thank you. Dawn?
Let's see, I had a community ed advisory meeting. I attended 3 staff picnics. Was in the Rum River Parade. Had a coffee with Ben. Tonight policy, year-end recognition, Zoom, and then graduation.
All right, thank you. Jim?
Graduation, Rum River Special Co-op meeting, and the policy meeting.
Thank you. There's no student council report tonight. Superintendent report.
Tell you what, it's a great meeting to be here, knowing that we completed a successful school year in the midst of a pandemic. And I'm nothing short of amazed of the work that had been done and our team for all the work that they've done and their resilience and perseverance. And everybody, our team members, our students, our parents. It was a year that we'll never ever forget. And I'm proud of the work that we've accomplished. And it was a great moment in the gymnasium with 1,000, 2,000 people standing together to sing the national anthem in preparation for the commencement. I thought that was very special and a lot of work that went into that. And I'm very thankful to everybody that helped pull that off, and thankful to the high school team members and administration for all the work that they did for graduation. So that was pretty special. And thank you, board, for all attending. Speaking of the high school, I just want to remind everyone that we will be one of the first and only school districts in the state of Minnesota that will have all of our teachers trained in mental health first aid, and with the idea of all of our students being team mental health first aid trained starting next fall. So our teachers are going through some of that training now, and we've also began some of our summer work to design curriculum, and we're inputting that into Atlas Rubicon. This will hopefully, the days of doing curriculum work and summer work and staff development work and having things end up on shelves or people saying, yeah, I remember doing this one day, but whatever happened to that? Those days are over. The work that we're doing is to be sustainable, to stand the test of time, and it's the Princeton method of designing curriculum. So we're excited about some of that summer work that's happening. I think there was a reference to the safe return to in-person learning. We did offer up the opportunity for anyone in the public to come to the board meeting to share any input on our plan. As you can see, no one attended. We did also offer the opportunity in our tired times for people to submit electronic input. We did get a handful of responses there that I'll review and I can send on as well. But basically, through ESSER funding and other laws, if you will, we are required to update our plan for a safe return to learning. And there's a requirement to offer input or opportunity for the public to provide input. So that's what we're doing now. Our summer programs are off and running. Today was our first day of targeted services. We have Tiger Club in all of our buildings. ESY is running. Summer credit recovery is running. Our buildings, believe it or not, are buzzing, along with summer construction projects and those kinds of things starting to get underway as well. So I'll just end my remarks there. I'm excited to have our conversation on our next steps with the possible building bond referendum coming up. So
One quick question.
Yes.
Do you envision distance learning being a part of the school next fall?
you know, I think that the one thing that we found is that we do have the ability to offer different kinds of learning, especially at the high school. I do think that there'll be some dabbling into what would be called like blended learning, where, you know, in some courses, students may have class 3 days of the week in the brick and mortar and 2 days a week. They might still be in the building. Maybe they're in the commons area or the library, but they're not, you know, in those four walls of that classroom. I think that there's going to be different exploration of some of that happening at our high school as a result of some of the things that we learned and had a lot of success with. We're really trying to move at our high school to have a customized, personalized approach to learning. And we know all of our students learn differently. And we're trying to look at options and opportunities for students to learn differently within one school setting. So we will have distance learning for those that will want to participate in our Princeton Online Academy or Princeton Online Minnesota. That will still remain an option. We're pushing that down into our middle levels. We were exploring options if we needed to prepare for distance learning kinds of things at the elementary settings, but quite honestly, we did not have a critical mass of students to constitute being able to do that. We did surveys and we got three to five people in a grade, and there's just no way that we could be able to offer that type of programming with that few of families even expressing any kind of an interest in that.
So you don't envision teachers having to do double prep, the distance learning on the in-class student learning?
No.
Because we'll have the online academy?
Yep, but I mean, we're certainly not going to close our options to the things that come up.
Yeah.
But no, I don't think that will be a norm. We're definitely going to be moving beyond that. And it would be, I would think, pretty special circumstances. You know, if we did have a teacher teaching some in the brick and mortar and some at home at the same time. You know, honestly, we had quite a few teachers enjoyed and thought that was pretty awesome to be able to do that. So I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what that's going to look like, but that's not going to be our plan to start the year that way.
All right, anything else? All right, thank you. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
Make a motion to approve it.
Motion by Chad, seconded by Jim. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? All right, agenda's approved. Do we have a motion to act on the previous board meeting minutes?
So moved.
Motion made by Deb,
Second.
seconded by Sue. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? All right, the minutes are approved. Moving on to the consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So move.
I'll second it.
Motion made by Jim, seconded by Chad. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Consent agenda.
I have a comment just related to that. There's a couple items that were brought to me regarding some changes, some small changes to the handbook at the high school, adding things, getting links put in and those kinds of things. I want the board to know that I will take those suggestions to the high school, and those would get made and reflected. And if there's anything like that that you guys see even afterwards, we still have time. Our goal with all of these handbooks is to get these, now that we do them electronically, we have some flexibility. Back in the day, we needed to have these approved so that they could be going to a publisher to be published in little booklets by probably July. Now they just need to be ready to be on our website by probably early to mid-August, when we send everything out to families with a link to the website so that they can review it. So we do have time. The high school, they were just kind of ready to go earlier than the others, so you'll see some of the other buildings coming up here in the following weeks as well.
All right,
Thanks.
thank you. All right, moving on to information. COVID relief funding summary. Michelle?
Thought I'd put a little cheat sheet together on all of the COVID money coming in and what has come in. So the first part of it, we've talked about many times, the CARES Fund, Mille Lacs County, Sherburne, City of Princeton. Those funds have all been expended and were expended by December 30th of 2020. ESSER 1 currently is for this year, from that basically January 1 to the end of the year. And by we've recovered about 96,000 of that, not recovered, but spent about 96,000 on teachers. It's all teacher salaries in there, so we will have all of that probably in our bank account by the end of July or the first part of August. ESSER 2 is the 1.2 million that we are using to offset this year's budget, along with our fund balance or the coming year's budget. ESSER 3, we started the first part of the process for ESSER 3 tonight by calling for public comment on our back to school plan. There will also be a whole process to build a budget for ESSER 3 that includes public comment. We have not started that process, but we'll do that shortly after July 1, as we have to have the beginning of that program into our service program by September 30th. Year 1, we have allocated that for devices. The devices that we have ordered are, well, just like everything, on back order forever, it seems. We did receive extra summer school money. That is helping us with transportation and with putting some pairs in some classrooms. For ESSER 2, our teachers will still be coded and paid for out of our targeted services funding, just like normal. We also have the opportunity to receive about 92,000 on the American Rescue Plan. As of this moment, we do not have a plan put in place, but it looks like we have the ability to work with this for a couple years here. So we will continue to learn more about that. Preschool, summer school, this came up the last week of school. We were originally allocated $14,000. We sent them in how many kids we thought we could serve. And they came back and said, here's 48,000 to serve those kids. So we believe that we will be able to serve preschoolers not only this summer, but also next summer. And we did this quite quickly. There were schools that turned down that preschool money. They didn't think they could get it turned around. Also, basically the same week, we received, we didn't receive it, but the Consortium for Homeless for Elk Rivers received 88,000 for the consortium. So our portion of that is about 18,000. They are looking at getting some additional mental health services for ages 16 and up. And that will be worked through with Elk River. And then during the year, we have received these funds, but don't really talk about them because they're coming in through Fund 4, is we received 30,000 in childcare relief. So that's the snapshot today.
Just one comment on that, board. I think it's just important to know that to receive those funds, it just doesn't magically appear. Generally speaking, we'll get an email and we'll say, you can qualify for these funds. If you'd like to have these funds, please fill out this 10-page report, give us all this information, jump through these hoops, and then we'll give it to you, right? So I'm thankful to our team of everybody in the offices that, a lot of times drop everything they're doing because there's timelines on this stuff to go ahead and work hard to get these dollars. And some of these things, like Michelle had mentioned, we've gotten more than what we've even asked for, and that's because of the due diligence and the extra efforts that some of our team members have made in their work to get these dollars. So just want to acknowledge that work.
All right, thank you.
I have a quick question. So the monies that have come in, that's one-time money, where would the district be if we hadn't received this money? And where will we be next year? Because I'm figuring that this probably won't, like the CARES funds and all that.
If we would have had to have expended all the first top out, that would have all come out of our fund balance, a good portion of it. There are things you saved on, obviously, I'll use activities as an example. We didn't have as many buses on the road for activities. We didn't have the expenses that we normally have expenses for officials, so we didn't expend as much. So you'd save we saved money there, but if we had to expend, the first line was close to 900,000 in CARES funding. So if we would put that, that's way more than what we would have saved on.
And then Eric, it's our intent with the ESSER 1, 2, and 3 dollars, which is the most significant dollars, to try and be very strategic to have that basically last over a 3-year period.
Yeah.
So for next year's budget, most of ESSER 1 will be used to fill the gap of our shortfall, along with some anticipated spend down of fund balance. Of course, we hope we do better, but and then, with the idea then that following year, we would be probably utilizing some of that ESSER 2 and 3 to help supplement. But between the next few years, that's going to be the balancing act that we'll have to dance, is to continue to operate between the fund balance and then probably continuing to make some budget reductions.
Hard decision.
Yep. To try and make it last. Yeah.
And then I just have one question on the American Rescue Plan. You said 2 years. You have 2 years to apply for that. Is that what it is? Or 2 years before it's?
The
Right.
92,000.
Yeah.
Well, right now, what I believe I know is that we have until 24 to use that. So that would be September of 24. To find these dates, I had to read through a lot of materials, so I could be off on that.
Okay, no worries. I was just curious.
But we do not have that allocated specifically to any task as of right now. So we will work on that after the July 1st turns around. We will start to figure out how we use this, what's left, and how we're gonna soften the blow as we come out of this. Because hopefully it'll help if we can slide gently into that last year, we won't go kaboom. So that's our goal.
Does anyone else have any questions for Michelle? All right, thank you, Michelle. Let's move on to the first reading of the policy. Summary of changes is there. Sue, do you have anything to say?
The only thing, we brought back the background check with revisions about timelines and how often and that kind of thing. And then we talked about increasing substitute pay, so $4.98. So then that was sent to finance to talk about that. And otherwise you can look at the rest.
All right, thank you. Is there any questions? All right, let's move on to discuss the potential bond referendum. All right, Vaughn?
I don't really have a presentation. I think this is more your question and answer and see what we can do. Next steps are really if you decide to move forward with submitting a review and comment to the state, explaining what the approach would be this time around. And then they review it. And from there on, it's taking board action to set a referendum and going through all the legal steps of getting it set up if that's the case. But I think tonight's really more about answering whatever questions you have, whatever they might be. Ben has the presentation from the community meeting, so we can reference that if needed.
What exactly does the state review? Just the plans, the everything, I mean, and
Well,
what,
they review a number of things, and
what group is it? I mean, is there?
it's the Department of Education or Department of Children and Family Learning. This was the one from 2020 that they had reviewed and approved, and then we pulled it off going into the vote. And so it's really, they've already reviewed this once, they know what the approach is. It would be, if you're going to go for a second question around the field house, it would be adding that. They look at the financial information to make sure that that all makes sense. We had the updated information from Ehlers in there for the tax impact. It's not a capacity-driven issue this time around, so the enrollment projection information's there, but that's really not what it is. It's mostly just, is this a viable and feasible project for the community? Does it fit the guidelines of what you should be doing, and do you have all the steps in place?
Ron, is there a big difference in construction costs from a year ago?
From a year ago, yes, because a year ago we were heavily into an unknown recession.
Yeah.
Right now, and this is, we've been watching everything bid that's coming up, and we're seeing a little bit of a spike, but I think what most people are seeing is confusing the spike in residential with the spike in institutional or commercial construction.
I know what happened to wood prices.
Yeah, so, and nobody was traveling anywhere. Everybody said, well, what can I do with my money? I guess I'll put it into my house. And then there was no way to cut the lumber anyways. And so, you see all these things happening, but we're seeing there's some material issues that we're watching right now. There's some lead time issues. That's probably the biggest thing that we're looking at, is how long does it take to get different items.
Supply chain issues.
Yeah, supply chain issues, but even if you were to go to a referenda, it will be November before there's a referenda, and then there's 9+ months of design. So we're out a year before we're even bidding anything, and the construction market is likely to be very different at that time. We've built in some escalation costs into our cost estimates to cover that, and we've been watching those things very carefully. And probably the biggest thing that we built in was, fortunately for us, right after we had this into the state and we were set to go to a vote, the state enacted mandatory storm shelter requirements for schools that we didn't budget before because they weren't required. And those added anywhere from $3 to $5 million for a project this size into it. So we're able to now, fortunately, not have that catch us and say that's built into this if that would move forward as well. So we've accounted for some of those things. It's a little bit higher, but when Ehlers ran the tax impacts, they're actually lower because of the development that you had since a year ago. And so the costs actually went down from what the base question was, but then we had to add some things back in. So it's pretty close to the same tax impact that was there before for the base question, not if you add the field house community center component to it, but for what was proposed before, it's relatively the same tax impact. So minor variation.
We have a lot of housing developments, like new housing developments that are being built right now.
Exactly.
I mean, out by you, Chad, I think there was 38 or 40 lots or something maybe?
Yeah, probably like 6 that are like going up. I mean.
Yeah, all the lots are sold is what I heard though,
Right.
so.
Awesome.
So the blessing you have is that this was never an enrollment-driven question, so you didn't get hurt in the year that you had to, kind of evaluate what's happening. It doesn't change any of the educational components. As a matter of fact, your questions earlier, and Ben saying, we're always going to be looking for different things. It's probably not distance learning as much as personalized learning for students in the future, and the ability to say, we've learned an awful lot about how people can learn and how content can be delivered, and you're likely going to have students in school, but not asynchronous in classrooms. And the types of spaces that we were discussing at the high school is exactly what the future learner needs to have in place. And so everything that you were looking at before lines up pretty well with what I think the future education looks like based on every district that we're working with and what we're talking about. And I'm not an educator, but the writing's on the wall.
Yeah.
I have up here the presentation, and I will send it to you all again, just so you have it in your inbox, or maybe if you have your email up, you can search it. But it's all of the information is still the same. The document that I have here is the tax impact, if you want to review that, of a question 1 or a question 2. The diagrams are on there in terms of, what the scope of the project would be, what a potential field house would be. Basically where we're at for timing right now and going back to process, this is probably 10 years in the making. And over the last 2 years, a significant amount of work and processes that have taken place. I think the last time we got together was our community meeting. And then I think we discussed at our work session, or our last board meeting, and the board wanted to have one more opportunity where you would have Vaughn and ICS all to yourself really to ask any kind of question that you might want. We did put on the agenda tonight, if you choose, for us to move forward with submitting the review and comment, which then would put us in a position where we would work with our bond attorney over the next month to, get the legal question, what that would be. And we would have that prepared for the board to vote, officially vote to go out for referendum with that question would be at the July meeting. So that's kind of where you're set up to go if you choose.
Can you enlarge your screen at all? I don't know if it's possible.
Is the file name community meeting
Yeah.
512?
Oh my God.
Yes.
At the bottom, does it work for you to do it like it does?
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there a particular screen you'd like to go to?
No, then it fills the screen so everyone can see a little bit more, especially that tax impact chart is a little busy.
And Michelle can probably speak on this too. Ehlers is updating this. This was the information they gave us for the community meeting.
Yeah.
But they've been asking a few more questions around interest earnings and when construction funds would be available. And so they've been updating the tax impact and would have that for the review and comment before that went in. But it's likely to be pennies one way or the other. This was accurate as of the May community meeting.
That's about as good as I'm gonna get it. I think you should be able to see
I
it.
think we're good.
Yeah, I can see it.
When we start construction, when would we actually start the construction, and will it be year round, or is it done in phases, or how is this gonna affect the high school
So,
students' learning during those academic years?
so maybe we can switch back to that diagram, Ben, because this is just what we were talking about with ICS over the last few days and saying, okay, so if this does go forward, how exactly does this work? One of the challenges was before, when you were going in May, that set us up pretty well for bidding in February, March, and then having that first summer of construction ready for construction. Now, because November, the design and the bidding won't really be done until August, September. So we don't have that first summer in place. What's likely to happen from a phasing standpoint is this: we would look at the big pieces that could be built standalone. So you'd start building either the gym addition or the community center addition, depending on which question passed, and get that underway during the school year. You'd start building the admin addition, the kitchen addition, the boiler room addition, all the things that could stand outside the building so that could get those all prepped and ready to go. You may end up with that field house, even saying, or the gym is saying, let's leave that as a concrete floor for a year because we're gonna have to put some people in there for swing space and move some people around. The biggest trick is the core of the building, the original high school in there, and how do you rip that apart and put it back together in a summer? You likely don't in the summer. It may be where we have to say we need to move some people out of the core over spring break into some other areas of the building so that we can vacate that, do some demolition, so that you can really get in there, take it apart, and then have a fallback plan for if we need to go into the fall to have some of that happening, sort of construction during the school year. What does that look like? How do we build disruption avoidance plans around that? The other tricky component is the shops. You really want to build the shop space where the shop space is that has to get torn down. And so we have to figure out how do we move them around a little bit as well. It may be that we end up building some shop space to the west of those sheds, get that ready to occupy so we can move them into there temporarily, tear down the rest of it, and then put the rest of it up and move them in. So there's some pretty complicated phasing that would have to happen, mostly because the core of the building is surrounded on all the different sides. We think it would probably, our goal would be to not have it go past 2 summers of construction. So it's about 2 full years of phased construction going through, and we have a lot to work out in the details of that, but none of it really changes one way or the other depending on which way you go for the different pieces. It's probably about 2 years of construction.
Well, this might be a ridiculous question, but like the Shopko space, are there options of going into different places like this?
That's the big one with the shop space itself, because we talked about, could we move the shops into the gym on concrete floor? You could, but it doesn't give you all the ventilation and the right kind of lighting or other things. It may be that there's some shop type space like the shop core, other things that we could say that becomes a temporary home for the shops for a year so that we can have the students go to that location and get those shops out of the way and get new space built in there to make that happen. So we'd be looking at some of those options to see what variations are available in town. It may even be like for the construction classes, for example, they might say, yeah, we're building outside this year. Most are, we're gonna use the classroom space that we have for instruction, and we're gonna do the construction actually outdoors. And, talk with the instructors about how does a year of different style learning look here.
The shops are probably the easiest thing to build out of this whole project, actually.
Especially since we're not.
Time
doing
frame
anything
wise,
that
that's an
first
easy
summer.
project in
Yeah.
the summer right there.
We could have the concrete made, we
Right.
could have all the wall panels delivered, have everything sitting on site, so when it comes time to build it, it's.
Yeah, the shops are like
One
the
floor.
easiest part of this whole project, so I don't think there'd be any problem doing it. And the Shopko space, if we were to move, like Shopko's already sold and bought, and there's a grocery store going in there.
Oh, I
So-
see.
Yeah.
A grocery store.
So like,
But there might be some other.
but I don't see it being an issue, but there could be an issue with the core of the building is gonna be very tough. But it's done
Construction during
every
occupied
day.
high school, half of us went through that, so we turned out okay.
Well, okay, Roseville High School, right? You guys have been working on that for 2 years, I think?
3.
And it's just about complete, I believe, right? So like, it looks like it's just pretty much site work, maybe a turf field or something going in right now. So it happens all the time, you guys. Like this stuff, this is what they get paid to do. This is what job superintendents get paid to do. And I mean, construction guys work around kids, people all day, every day. And this is,
It'll be a little bit tricky.
it's
for-
tricky, but it happens.
Yeah, you maximize what you can do in those 2 summers and you put it back together and say, okay, maybe we don't have carpet or flooring down in this room, or maybe, this room has temporary ceilings in place and so we can get through part of the school year and you look at your breaks or your winter break and say, okay, we're gonna have the contractors come in and take care of this.
Yeah, we can get carpet done over Christmas break or whatever. I mean,
There's some things you can't, you have to get the boiler in place and it has to be up and running by October 1st, just in case.
Yep.
There's other things that have to happen, but there's a lot of flexibility you can have. Especially if we're building that big gym box, there's a whole lot of stuff you can do in there.
One question that more than one board member has asked me is, the dollars that are in the budget for the furniture and the fixed, all of that, especially given a couple of spaces like the fitness, cardio, and then the shops, right? I mean, we got a couple spaces where the equipment and things in those spaces are expensive. So like, can you just speak to how you calculate that? Oh,
We typically, at this point, we're using a rule of thumb in terms of, is it about 10%, 11%, 12% of what the construction cost is, and that works pretty well. What I can tell you about your existing building, because it's not a capacity-driven exercise, you have some furniture that you will likely reuse, but just like you're replacing some of the learning spaces with more personalized or future-ready learning, there's some things you're gonna say, if we have these spaces, we need different type of furniture to really make that work. And so you would likely do a furniture inventory. You put the furnishings into the new spaces that you have that are appropriate for that. And with the shop space and the gym space where you don't have desks and chairs, then that furniture portion of the budget covers the equipment for it. So it covers your shop equipment, it covers your athletic equipment, it covers those types of things. So it's saying furniture, fixtures, and equipment are whatever's going to go into that space, and it's roughly 10 to 12% of what the construction budget is. So you do an inventory of what you have, decide what needs to be new, decide what you're gonna reuse, and go from there.
There's
There's
always
lots of-
potential of getting donations from like Glen Metalcraft for a
There is,
piece of equipment or plastic products or something like that.
there's a little bit of that.
You know,
Gotta be careful about what you take on as gifts.
yeah.
So,
Not everything's a gift.
but that is accounted for in the budget, so.
I have a question, between, one question and two questions. So let's say we go with two questions and the second field house fails. So then a lot of that athletic stuff goes back into, or stays in question one.
Mhm.
Does that mean the field house is never on the ballot again? Because we have fixed it by what we are doing in question one?
Not necessarily. We can master plan for that, but there's some things that would be more challenging to do in the future. What we're going to do with the gym for the storm shelter then, if you do the field house, or if that question passes, instead of fortifying the entire new field house space to be storm shelter, because that would be very, very expensive, we would actually be building a basement under the locker room addition to say that's gonna be our storm shelter. If question 2 doesn't pass, then we would say, okay, we're only building one gym, make that gym a storm shelter. It makes it very difficult to turn that gym into a full field house in the future, but we would lay it out in a way that you could say, yes, we can add a field house to the north of that in the future. I think part of the messaging I would have for the community, in terms of that question 2 piece, would be based on how this is set up, what's in the base question already and all the other amenities. That community center is never, ever, ever going to be as low cost to add those features as it is doing as part of question 2, simply because you're doing the other components now. And the community's talked about it for so long that it really becomes the missed opportunity to do that in the future, simply because you're gonna have all those extra costs are gonna go back into it again, versus saying all these other components are taken care of as part of the building. We will master plan it as best as possible on the site. We'll make sure that everything's laid out and that can be done in the future. But really are you ever gonna see a cost this low to get to that point again? You just won't. And so I think that's has to be part of the message if a question 2 is considered to why now? It's been talked about for years, and this is the absolute best way to get it done. And if not, it might be a missed opportunity that people have.
So would there be any advantage to only having one question? And just put the field house in with?
It's hard for me to say, yes or no on that right now. I think there's probably more risk than there is
Because it'd be
advantage.
too much?
Yeah, it's,
Sticker shock? you
yeah,
think?
you had a very well-defined, this is what we need to do. And while the community center was discussed, it
Yeah.
wasn't in that initial criteria. I think it'd be hard to say, yeah, we've gone back and we've decided that actually was a need as well. Everything that we talked about, since this came back up and the survey came out, is we all agree that that's a very strong want and something the community talked about, but I think you run more risk of someone saying you're asking for the wrong thing.
What are those figures, just so I don't.
They are one slide back or one slide forward. No, that must be the other way. Maybe it's a few slides. I know I saw them up there. There you go. So,
Okay.
and there's a little bit of bond costs that have to go in there. I have some placeholders that I plugged in, so I need Ehlers to confirm that the financing costs are accurate for what they have there, but that's within reason for what each of those would be. So just shy of 53.7 million for the base, and before it was 49.5.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
So,
yeah.
so it went up a little bit, storm shelters in there, some inflation, and then question 2 is that 14, just under 14.7 for the community center piece, which is all the additional items that go into them.
So the base is 49.9, is that?
It was.
Yeah, now it's
2020.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, now it's 53.
right.
So say the field house didn't pass.
Yep.
Can we go out, how soon can we go back out to the community and say, hey, this is a good deal. We really would like to get it added onto this. Could we go out right away again for referendum, or is it kind of off the plate at that point?
No, you could go back out right away with the other wrinkle in next year is it's a census year. Any year that ends in 2 means that you can only have elections on 3 of the possible 5 election dates. So you're limited to February 2022, August, or November. So if it failed in November, I think you might actually be able to get it in for February. But hold on, if you couldn't go back out with the same question, this is the Annandale problem. They failed their referenda in May, and because there's not 180 days before November, because of how the calendar worked, they're short 7 days, they had to change their question significantly.
Oh, wow.
This, because it's a second question, if you went back out again, it's a completely different question. So you might be able to pull that off and do it for February. Worst case scenario is it would be August before you'd be able to go back to the
But if we could get it in February, that would really help us in the planning phase, if we could get that passed.
Yes, yeah, because then we could adjust the drawings and the plans. It might be a little bit of a challenge because it would be a very different part of the design and be moving in there, so it'd be a little bit of a challenge, but February might be better than August.
And then do we go out, I'm sure you guys, but lowest bid that's compatible? Is that how we do when you guys go out for bid?
Yep.
That's how it's done?
You have to follow public bid law, which means the lowest responsible bidder. They have to be able to get bonded, they have to meet the requirements, and you're required, unless you're actively in a lawsuit, pretty much with a contractor or subcontractor involved, to take the lowest responsible bid, no matter who they are. As long as they can get qualified, you're gonna be working with them. That's one of the reasons that you have ICS as an owner's representative and you have us as architects, is hopefully you have enough trust to say, yeah, we've dealt with tough contractors before and they know what to do to help us with that.
But it's pretty much a lot of the same contractors that bid on all these jobs.
It is a lot of the same contractors, and we have a pretty strong network between Wold and ICS to make sure that we have a lot of interest in the bid, healthy competition, to make sure that we're getting good, solid numbers on bid day. We don't want to just have one bidder, because then you're at the mercy of a single bidder. We want there to be lots of people looking at it. One thing it helps us answer questions is, as much as we try to put a quality set of documents together, sometimes a bidder, when they're looking at the document, says, I don't understand how you're doing it this way. And they might ask us some questions during the bidding phase that, we clarify and say, oh, you know what, we should probably change that, and we'll issue an addendum that fixes that component. So the more people looking at a set of documents, the healthier you're doing.
You're lucky here, you have very qualified contractors in Princeton and around Princeton. So we've always had a real good luck with coverage and pricing.
We draw from the cities, from St. Cloud, from Duluth, we draw from all over to get to this area, which helps us a lot. Really helped us with the primary school. Yeah. Got some good painters in town. Florida.
Just a couple.
Yeah.
So what do we need to decide as a board then to,
Well, I think first we have to decide whether or not we want to go with 2 questions or 1. We haven't really decided that.
We haven't ever decided that.
Yeah, we need to have that for the review and comment to turn that in.
I personally think we should do 2 questions. I'd hate to ruin the opportunity to potentially renovate the high school by the people that don't like the community center idea.
well, plus the community wanted just that high school thing, right? I mean, that was the need.
That's the need, but we've been hearing from a lot of people that the field house is also wanted.
And for a
Some
very
people
long,
say needed.
for a very long time, I mean, even when we did the meetings at the primary, people were bringing up.
Asking about it, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's part of
I
it.
sure
But
go for 2 questions, not 1.
Now that you've said, we could go back out, especially if it's a close vote. I think we really need to reevaluate that. I mean, if it's a huge difference, adding that field house, then that kind of gives us the answer too, but there's so many components between getting our high school up, to more modernize along with the field house. I think it's gonna play into effect into our enrollment down the road. I think there's a lot of pieces that this is all gonna affect us down the road in 5 or 10 years.
How does everyone feel about 2 questions versus the 1? Do we like the 2-question idea?
I do.
I do as well. I think 2 questions. is-
I do, yeah.
Sue, Don, and Eric, yeah. Sue?
Well, I'd like to hold them hostage to get the academics, to get the field house, but it's probably too risky.
I
Right.
think you gotta weigh the risk and reward.
That's why I
on this
asked
one.
the question. I mean, it is an option, but
Yeah.
it could be pretty
Pretty
chancy.
risky.
Yeah.
And Don, 2 questions, you think's the way to go?
I think so, and I'm glad, like Vaughn said, we can turn it around. Especially if it's close, I
We
think that's
could,
something
but-
we could.
You gotta
we gotta look.
evaluate the political atmosphere too.
We got, like I said, we gotta look at what
Even
the
if it is
numbers come
close.
in. We gotta really look at what the numbers come in as.
And just the general atmosphere and how people are feeling about it too, because we don't wanna cut people off at the knees either, even if it is close, we gotta kind of gauge, if we go out right away, we could be seen as, well, I guess you guys always think you know the best, you don't care about what we think, so we have to kind of be a little careful, but yeah, I mean, if we could do that, it's a possibility for sure.
I'm thinking through your questions of master planning a little bit, and how would we take the risk out of master planning for the future? It would raise that dollar amount from question 1, but one of the things we could do to say we put pieces in place to allow that to happen at any point in the future would be plan for just doing the storm shelter below the locker room no matter what. So you don't have to have the gym space be contingent on that, and make our gym, if you're only adding the 1 gym box now to leave room for the future, make it large enough so that you can add the walking track in the future and expand out for the field house, so that you've got a little extra square feet built in for that, and we accommodate the storm shelter independent of the gym space regardless of which. It would raise the cost of question 1 and theoretically lower the cost of question 2 a little bit, but it would prep you better for master plan for the future and say, this is where it's going in the future once we get the community to say yes to it. And that would be an adjustment we could make if you want to take some of the risk out of it. Does that make sense? Because we were looking at A or B, but
Right,
thinking through it a little bit more, that might make more sense.
just in case.
And don't quote me on that, you can go back as soon as February. I think, you know,
That would
sure that
be- I
legal
think
looks at
that-
that and says yes or no. 'Cause-
I think it would be hard, but then realize, because I was thinking May, but when you
If
said
May was an
consensus.
option, yeah, we would definitely say that, but.
I think we just get both passed right away and don't worry about it.
I think that's the other component, and you're not a vote yes committee, but if the community is going to do this, we need the people who came to those meetings in 2019 and 20 saying, why are you not doing a field house? You have to do a field house. And us saying, it wasn't part of the need, we're accommodating the physical, the other needs here. Yeah, but why can't you just let the community decide? They have to be the ones pushing this and selling this. They have to be the ones that are very loud in the community and saying, we asked them for a community center, they're giving us the option for a community center, we have to pass a community center.
And I think it has to also be driven by, the community, but also what are the needs of, the parents? The parents are gonna have to be involved for both the high school to pass and for the community center. We're gonna have to have that strong base.
I'm going back to honoring that first community group who put together the plan. And the community center wasn't part of that, but the needs were for the high school.
Right.
And that's why I think to honor that process, you need to have 2 questions.
The needs were all discussed and all there, and I think really the only reason the options committee didn't push to do the field house is they also were working with what they believed was the right dollar amount. And
Yes.
saying,
Exactly.
we believe this is the dollar amount, we don't want to go past that, this is it. I give them credit, especially Eldon, in identifying what it was, because when you did the survey, it came back less than $1 difference between what Eldon said, this is what the community will support, and the survey came back and backed it up. Man, he knows his stuff.
Yeah.
You didn't tell him that, did you?
Oh, no, he told me. He told me. He told me. He knew what it was.
Everyone understand the difference between the question one potential layout versus the question two? Like, so question one, we have the standalone gymnastics gymnasium. And if question one and two both get passed, we would potentially move the gymnastics into the old high school gym. There's a couple other things I think that might have.
Wrestling.
And these were diagrams, but I think, yeah, you might end up that you build the gymnastics gym as part of like the field house expansion, so you'd have those two there, and so you change a few things.
But we understand that there's a bunch of moving parts between question one and two. So if question one just passes, we're still gonna get a gymnastics area, we're gonna get a wrestling area, we're gonna get a weight room. And we're getting all of
Depends
those
where.
needs.
What you're saying right now, and then you and I kind of talked, the other day as well, I think it'd be good to have, like, on our Q&A, when we do this, a list of all the things of these different scenarios, so because people are gonna wanna know,
Right.
and give them a place to find that stuff, because that'll help at least, I think.
Our website will be a strong driver, right? Because I was talking with a board member from Elk River, and they said their website was a main driver for this. Because they've done 3 referendums here, what, in the last 5 years, 6 years?
One in 2014 and one in 2019.
Now, does anyone have any questions about the intermediate school and the student services building?
And those didn't change. Those were, yeah, the primary focus of the intermediate school, sorry for the semantics. The main focus of the intermediate school was that the kitchen and cafeteria are too small. So what we'd be doing is building a new larger kitchen space adjacent to it that could happen during the school year, then tearing out the old kitchen and expanding the cafeteria out into that area. Some special education renovation to customize there, looking at doing some updating to the specialist rooms on the west side of the building, and some maintenance work in the gym. And that's primarily what the intermediate school was. The student services building was carrying some walls all the way up to deck to help with acoustics, and renovating the cafeteria to take carpet out and turn it into much more of a flexible cafeteria / learning space, one that they could do art and science and other things in, and really have that space be active and engaged for all hours of the day, as opposed to simply just a cafeteria space.
So, say this passes, when it goes out to bid, is it bid under 3 separate projects then, or is it?
It's likely not only bid on the 3 projects, we might even look at the high school piece and say, is there any advantage to us breaking that up into different packages based on what the phasing looks like? We want to make sure we've got consistency in the contractors, but we'd be looking at that together and deciding, here, this makes the most sense in terms of how we would look at doing it. But I don't think, you certainly wouldn't want the same contractor obligated to do all 3 projects.
Right.
However, there might be an advantage, if we do 2 general contractor projects for the intermediate and the student services, and they say, if we get both of those, we can do a combined bid and save some money.
Yeah, those 2 would be easy, but if you got, man, it'd be really tough to have one general doing the high school while it's, students are there and the intermediate students are there, it's.
Those 2 make sense too, because I'm sure there'll be a much shorter design time, so we might want to take advantage of getting out of this.
Getting them done soon.
Well, you know the general contractor's gonna try to save money and have one super run the whole thing, so that's tough.
Well, student services is
Student services is
Yeah.
really,
relative, I don't want,
it's basic.
yeah,
That's one, depending on what it is, we may not even end up bidding it as a general contractor. You might do some quote packages for different, areas and say, yeah, we can get in there and we can have somebody just quote the walls. Get 2 or 3 quotes and move forward. It might be much more flexible. So those projects are small enough that we have some additional options. Neither one of these keeps me up at night, just the high school. Go.
Shoot, another.
So we can do this, how are we gonna do this?
On a question on the high school is, if we passed the second question, and we took away that, our second competition gym, now we would have, because I know we're gonna need, we have lots of nights that we have 2 competitions, like a wrestling match and a basketball game happening at the same time. So we would have, our new space would have bleachers.
You could set it up for bleachers if that was one of the things that we wanted to make sure. Hastings their competition gym is in the field house, and they have bleachers on hydraulics that they bring out and go to the side of the court. They do it that way, so field house could be set up for your second competition gym.
Yeah, well, we can get into that in the design phase. I don't think that we'll want to lose a second competition gym. And then another piece I have with the high school is just the aesthetics of the entrance. I know that I'm trying to find the high school. Now we would have the admin and reception kind of up front. Would that mean that, you know, the
You know what it
entrance?
likely means? The triangle roof entry piece is gone.
Oh.
So that kind
Well, I just think that, you know, I would hate to have,
It doesn't pass, I find money just to do that.
that was one of the things when Bram passed, they said, I don't care what happens, just get rid of that canopy that they had out there forever.
I don't wanna, you know, $50 million or $40 million on a high school and, you know, your first grand entrance is into old tile 1980 flooring.
No, that actually is the advantage to doing the additional office work now and redoing that entry, is it gives you the opportunity to really redefine that part of the building to give it a much stronger contemporary aesthetic for where people are coming in, stronger intuitive entry as well. You know, yep, I know exactly where I'm going for that. The kitchen piece gives us a little bit more ability to shield the dock, which has always been a bit of a problem, how close it is to the parking and where people come in. So I think that all will go into giving it a much different aesthetic.
Parking, because people are so irritated by the things going on at the primary intermediate. And in that view from the top down, there's 2 parking areas around that field house. Can you just talk about that whole parking situation again? Because we don't want to run into that whole thing again about.
So one of the areas that you can see is we've moved the buses out of that equation. The buses are now on the south side of the high school. So that separates the buses and the cars a little bit further. If you're going to do the community center piece, we've created a separate parking lot adjacent to the community center for that, so that you can really not have those cars in the mix as well. And then as part of the long-term maintenance, it would be really updating that main parking lot, putting a little bit more clarification into where the drive lanes are, making sure that the flow of that works better going through. So it's really all geared towards trying to clean up and remove buses from out of the front and get the community set up in a way that makes sense for that community center piece. Also, I think in terms of the primary and intermediate school, I'd love to have a conversation about the buses again and go back to the original intent and the design of that, because I don't think that's how it's being used, and see if we can revisit that conversation with, let's try this operationally, because it should work much better than that.
You gotta remember too, we got that whole parking lot by the tennis courts that sits completely empty, like
Well,
all day.
I totally understand that, but our secure entry is in the front, and that is I would think there'd be pushback from high school admin to have kids coming in the back.
They don't want kids coming back. They want to move all the kids out to those front parking lots, which is one of the reasons for moving the buses and the staff to the back.
Yeah. So, you know, we just have to be sure that people can use that community center during the day that are said, yes, we want that.
In that community parking lot that's way over to this side here, how many cars do you think you'll get in there?
Do you remember when we were laying that out, John, what number we were talking about for that? 30, 40, something like that.
Yeah.
During the day, just based on what we see at other community centers, you don't have that many people in there during the day. It's usually more before and after school. And when that's
It'll be our elderly that use it during the day, that's why.
and that gives them closer parking to the
Yep.
door where they would go in, their own entry piece.
So that should be sufficient for,
That on the moving sidewalk. for the young man.
As they're going into
As they're going
the
into-
walking track.
It's a moving
Hell
walking
with the
track.
walking track,
Yeah.
moving sidewalk.
All right, so we've established that we are gonna have 2 questions. What do we need to do next?
Well, I think now is still the portion where you have question answer. I think later down in the agenda, you would have the opportunity, someone would have an opportunity to make a motion to submit a review and comment, based on 2 questions as presented in this presentation that you've seen.
Does anyone else have any more questions?
Well, just going back to what you had said, for future planning on that field house, if it didn't pass, and then you were talking about doing that stuff to the gym, are you gonna figure some of that out for us to see that, or
Yeah.
how does that work?
Well, essentially, there's probably nothing in the diagram that changes on that. It's more just making sure we've got the right dollar amounts budgeted. So, like I said, it's really just taking some money out of what's allocated in question 2 right now and saying, we're gonna do those things as part of question 1, no matter what, to prepare it for the future. So it's just adjusting those and having Ehlers update the tax impact information. It doesn't change the diagram as much, because the diagram is not designed. That's simply us looking at, does this fit? How does this work here? And so just knowing you'd want to master plan that for the future, we just make those adjustments now to say, okay, we build a little bit more, a little differently in phase 1 of this to allow for that second question to pass or not pass and to come back later.
And that will work out better because the new gym that we built, if it was done the other direction, the field house would have gone in much easier, right? Or,
It changes a little bit. It's mostly that we don't put the storm shelter requirements into the gym. We treat the storm shelter requirements as a standalone space under the locker rooms, just like we would do as if question 2 passed. We just say, yep, we'll spend that money in question 1 to create that storm shelter without making the gym the storm shelter space. So the gym's got more flexibility, and we just make it a little larger so that in the future you can add that walking track inside without encroaching on the actual gym box space. So it gets a little bit wider than what it was. And it tells us you don't have the option of orienting the gym this way or this way. It has to be this way because we know in the future we want to add more gyms to it as we go. So it changes the design criteria we would design around. But it doesn't really change the diagram much. I think.
I get that, but
So that would
it's
be
just better future planning.
Yep.
And we have options.
Correct.
All right, is there any other questions? No? All right, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate that.
So we'll move forward with making revisions to that, have the review and comment prepared, and we don't have to submit that to the state yet. We can wait until you take official board action in July to move that forward. There's not a lot pending at the state right now from a review and comment standpoint. And like I said, they've reviewed this before. We've talked about this in detail with them before, so there won't be a lot of questions on it in terms of what the changes are. So we'd have that ready for you for the July board meeting, so that if you took action to move forward with the referenda, we could submit to the state immediately. And that'll show the revised budgets, and if the diagram changes at all based on that, just the little adjustments to the diagram.
All right,
Thank you.
Of course.
all right, let's move on to action, the budget, 2021, 2022 budget.
I move to accept the 21-22 budget as proposed.
Second,
The motion made by Eric Minks, seconded by Jim. Is there any discussion? We'll vote by roll call, starting with Chad.
Yes.
Deb?
Yes.
Eric? Eric Stramberg, yes. Sue?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
Jim?
yes.
All right, budget is approved. Do we have a motion to submit the review and comment to the Minnesota Department of Education as presented?
I move to submit the review and comment to the Minnesota Department of Education as presented.
We have a motion by Eric Minks,
I'll second it.
seconded by Chad. Is there any discussion?
Did you just say we were gonna wait to do this till July?
I
We
would
could
say,
wait
I'd
if
say
we
that'd be
wanted.
the discussion is simply because we changed a little bit based on this master planning. Let's have you hold off on that until July. That way you can get a draft ahead of time. You can take a look at it and we're not in a rush with the state. We can still make it for July. So I might
It
suggest.
has to be submitted by what, August
the
4th
beginning
or
of
something,
August,
wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
11
90 days
Um,
prior
So
to
it'd be-
November 2nd,
If you,
so.
if you submitted it after your July meeting, then you'd have no issues.
So we'll do it at our July 20th meeting.
Okay, so, all right, so this is changing a little bit.
A
So,
little bit.
so you, instead of you submitting as soon as this week or next week, we're gonna wait.
Yeah, and when we had talked earlier, it was, if this is the budget and this is the approach, then we don't have any issues going forward. But based on our discussion tonight, I think I just feel comfortable making sure that you see what the difference is in the costs. It still matches everything you want to do, and we've still have plenty of time to wait for the state. So I'm amending my recommendation to you earlier, Ben, where I said, let's,
Okay, so are we going to still be able to work with our bond attorney, you know,
Yeah, we'll
even
still do
even
all
now,
this.
so that in the July meeting, they'll be able to vote on that bond language that we'll have prepared and the submission of the review and comment. So everything will happen at that meeting.
Okay, well, there's a motion and a second.
So we need,
Yeah,
Chad
rescind it.
second.
But my question is, if we were to vote for it, can you just
Yeah.
go under that tonight's recommendation to do what you need to do?
we could, and we could, even before it turned in, you're just saying, work on the review and comment, and get ready to submit. We could still send it to you before it's submitted to the state. Your vote tonight could simply be, yeah, we want to have a review and comment and submit to the state, and we can work on it with adjustments.
Yeah, because there's no deadline or date on it, so.
Right, correct.
all right, so we have a motion and a second. Do we want to submit this to review and comment? We have a motion and a second, so we have discussion right now.
We're gonna do it either this time or we'll do it, well, the vote will be the same in
Yeah, we're
July.
gonna approve it regardless, I believe, so.
I'm not gonna withdraw my motion. I think if we vote for this, I trust them to do the right thing and they can give it to us. We can look at it in July, but let's get this moving.
Okay. Any other discussion? All right, well,
And if you don't want to, just vote it down. We can
right,
redo it.
does this have to be a roll call or is it just?
I would make it a roll, I would make it a roll
Yeah.
call.
All right, be a roll call vote, starting with Chad,
Yes.
Don,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Eric Stramberg, yes. Sue,
No.
Eric Minks,
Yes.
Deb,
Yes.
all right. Review and comment is approved.
So by saying that, we can still decide what dollar amount will be at the July meeting for review?
Review and comment will have the budgets as part of it. So the document we'd be submitting to the state would be your official, this is what we're going to ask the voters to approve. So we could amend it with the state, but it'd be stronger if we said, yeah, this is what we're going forward with. What I would recommend is, since you voted on it and it's passed, we are going to prepare the document and it will be ready for submittal to the state, so it's all there. We'll have the revised budgets in it, and before we submit it actually to the state, so it's prepared, when you have your July meeting, if you vote to go to referendum, we'll make sure the dollar amount matches and it'll be good to go. So that you don't have to rescind the motion, it's prepared, it's ready, it's still your board action of submit it to the state for approval, it's still valid, it just means we'll be submitting it after you take your vote in July.
And I think it's important for everybody to know that at this point, you have not officially voted to go for referenda.
Right.
You just voted to get the ball rolling, and then that vote would come in July.
All right, let's move on to 11C, set a special board meeting to award bids for the immediate boiler project. Well,
Yeah, I wanna, this is an unfortunate, unforeseen event, and I apologize to the board, but because of timelines, if we want to get our boiler project going, we can't wait until next month for you to accept or award a bid. So I mean, we literally need to get 4 of you together for a very, very short meeting to accept a bid.
On the 6th.
On July 6th. So do we have a motion to direct administration to set a special board meeting for July 6th to award the bid for the intermediate school boiler project?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Jim, seconded by Eric Minks.
Discussion, can I say time yet to be determined? Because if I can get 4 people at 3 o'clock versus 6 o'clock, I'd prefer to do that.
Yeah, as long as it's posted in the proper amount of time, yeah.
Yeah.
Is there any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
There's no additions to the agenda. Future meetings are listed there. July 20th, we're gonna be going over board goals, superintendent evaluation, and potentially approving this referendum, or discussing and voting on it, I guess.
Yeah, and I'll probably, I'll bring back our continuous improvement plan, because we really want to work to align superintendent evaluation, board goals, and our continuous improvement plan. So between next meeting and probably the following meeting, we'll be doing work on those areas.
Do we have a motion for adjournment?
So move.
Motion made by Jim,
Second.
seconded by Eric Minks. All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned.